Alright, so in this video, I'm going to go over everything that I got done in the past year working on my house and the costs of everything. I did a similar video last year in January of 2025 covering everything that I did in 2024, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description, and that'll catch you up to everything I'm going to talk about in this video. So it's now January of 2026, and I'm going to talk about everything I did in 2025. So I started this whole project in June of 2024, where this view looked a lot different. All that was here was this existing house, and then the rest of this was all just yard. So I got a lot of work done that first year. I had to move a bunch of dirt to make room for this addition, and then that old house didn't have a basement under it. So I decided, while I was putting the basement and foundation for the addition, I decided to put one underneath that old house too. So that first year was a lot of dirt moving and foundation work. I had to get everything to grade. Then I poured new footings for the addition and underneath the old house. Then I built ICF basement walls. Those got filled with concrete. And then the old house had to get lowered onto the new basement foundation. After that was done, I did all of my foundation waterproofing and all my drainage, and then backfilled. Then I had some concrete guys come out, and they had poured and finished the entire basement floor. And one of the last things I got done in 2024 was the floor joists and subfloor for the first floor on the addition. And that was about it for progress in 2024. I think it was like late October at that point, and I had put a tarp over the subfloor to try to prolong it because I knew I wasn't going to get much done that winter. So that was kind of a recap of everything that happened the first year, and like I said, I'll leave a link in this video description of that video I did a year ago that goes into more depth of everything I did and the cost of everything. But that first year, the cost of all that work was about $65,000. So in this video, I'm going to pick up where I left off with that $65,000, and in the spring of 2025, this is what everything looked like, and this is where I started with the work in 2025. So I started building and standing up all of my exterior walls, and the cost of all my framing lumber, my 2x4s, 2x6s, LVL headers, all that kind of stuff was $2,692. And I will say that is the cost of all of my framing lumber, all of my overhangs, the chimney lumber, and some of the interior stuff. I started framing some of the interior walls. So that's my total cost so far for all of the framing lumber. And I went with the Zip System sheathing, and it is the R sheathing. So there's a 1/2 inch of insulation laminated to the inside of that sheathing. I actually got a really good deal on this stuff. I found 2 bunks of it for sale on Marketplace. I paid $3,000 for it, and from what I could tell, that was significantly cheaper than retail price. And I had to buy some new stuff, non-insulated, for the chimney. It was like another $250 for those panels. And the Zip System tape is not cheap, and I needed a lot of it. But for all of the tape that I needed for the walls and the roof sheathing, I paid $1,236 for just the tape. Then I started working on the second floor loft area, and the cost of the I-joist for that second floor was $1,709. And then the subfloor for the second floor was $900. And the cost for all of my fasteners, so screws, nails, I-joist hangers, some other random hardware, kind of stuff like that, the cost for all that was $1,825. The next step after getting the walls up was starting the roof framing. The cost of all my roof joists, my 2x12 roof joists, was $4,194. And I needed to make 2 LVL ridge beams, and those cost $824. And I have a 20-foot tall steel column in the middle of the house that supports each end of those ridge beams. That steel column was $550. And I also used the Zip System sheathing for the roof, and the cost of that 5/8 zip for the roof was $2,450. So after I finished the roof framing and got the roof sheeted, I kind of took a break from working on the actual house, and I did some work on my front yard and these retaining walls. So before this retaining wall, this corner was kind of just like an unmaintainable dirt hill. I chose to do this walkout basement for the addition, so I knew I was gonna have to do some kind of retaining wall on one or both sides. I was really lucky to find all these retaining wall blocks local and for a really cheap price. All of these retaining wall blocks I got for $1,500. And then I wanted to build them the right way, so I did do wash gravel and drainage behind the walls, and I have $1,532 in wash gravel, and then I have $445 in the drainage. And that cost for the drainage is not just these retaining walls. I have a bunch of other miscellaneous costs. I have the drainage for like the foundation drain that runs kind of right there. I had some more pipe and fittings when I relocated my septic line. So that $445 for drainage is for a bunch of miscellaneous pipe. After I finished the retaining walls, I regraded most of the yard. I planted some grass, and I have about $450 in grass seed fertilizer and some bales of straw. After I finished regrading the yard, I started working on the house again. So I built all of my roof overhangs, and I used an LP Smart Siding for that fascia, that black fascia board that you see there. And I have $700 in that fascia trim. So I got my roof underlayment down. I did a peel and stick membrane over the entire roof, and that underlayment cost $1,606. And I did 2 layers of 1-inch polyiso insulation board on top of the roof sheeting. That was another marketplace find. I got all of that insulation for $1,500. And I chose to vent my roof a little bit different way than normal, so I needed furring strips on top of all that insulation. It still amazes me how many furring strips I needed, but I needed $981 of furring strips to make a 16-inch on center grid on top of all that insulation. And then it was time for the metal roof. I went with a standing seam snap lock style metal roof, and for the whole package, for the trim, the panels, the screws, everything, it was $8,566. And the whole roof took a lot longer than I thought. Probably took a month or over a month to finish the roof, but it turned out really nice. The next thing I did was windows and man doors. So for most of the windows and 2 man doors, it was $4,576. I started building some inside walls. There's 2 bedrooms and a bathroom upstairs in this loft. And then downstairs, I'm still figuring out the kitchen, and then there'll be a living and dining room in this big open area here. And I don't have these front 8 windows yet. I still have foam board over them, so I can try to keep some heat in here, but hopefully early spring, when the weather starts getting warmer, hopefully I'll be able to get those windows in. I did get my garage doors in. So for the garage doors, the hardware, everything to mount them, and some of the weather stripping and stuff, it was $4,846. A large majority of that was just the doors themselves. And then another miscellaneous cost I have was a bunch of random stuff like spray foam, saw blades, shims, glue, drill bits, random stuff like that. That was about $450 in random stuff. So that was the bulk of the cost of each step of the way that I did last year. And there was a few other items that I didn't really include, but everything added together was $46,648. And that was pretty much the cost of everything in 2025. And if I add that to the 2024 costs, or pretty much the overall cost of this whole project, I'm at $111,590. So almost $112,000 to go from this little house to what you see here. And after making this video and adding all those numbers together to really figure out how much we've spent, I'm pretty happy with that number. Because sometimes when we're in the middle of it and my wife and I are spending all of the extra money we have working on this house, it's kind of hard to see where that money's going. But after knowing all the numbers that we've spent and looking at what we have, it doesn't seem so bad. Because I have a pretty good idea of what new build houses are going for, and used houses for that matter, and it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to have a house built. And that's a huge cost savings that we have here. My wife and I are trying to do most of the work ourselves with the help of family and friends, and that saves a lot of money on labor. I would guess that this would cost another $100,000 on top of my material costs, probably even more than that, just for the labor to do all the work. We've also done this all cash so far. We haven't had to take out any loans for this house addition. That is also another goal that hopefully we can end it with. So that's pretty much it. I'm happy with the progress so far. We're just taking it one step at a time when we have the money and time to do so. With that being said, there is still a lot of work left to do. It can be kind of overwhelming thinking about what's left. We still got to get those windows in. We got to do siding all the way around the house, some kind of stone veneer on the basement foundation. We have to build a somewhat small back porch, a covered back porch by this back door here. We have to rip off all the siding from this old house and the entire roof structure. I have to match, well, I don't have to, but I choose to do things really complicated. So I want to match that gable pitch coming off the addition all the way across on this old house. So we have to tear the whole roof off, frame that, tear off the siding, match the new siding to the addition siding, and there'll be some kind of front covered porch here as well. And not to mention all of the interior stuff. I have to finish framing, electrical, plumbing, drywall, all of the finishes, appliances, flooring. I mean, there's a lot left to do. But one step at a time, and there's going to be a lot more video content for everyone who's interested in following along. So it's really cold today. It's hovering around like 0 degrees. And I borrowed this thermal camera. It's kind of cool to see where the heat's going. So that's just down in the snow, -1, 0, somewhere around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you go on the zip sheathing, it's like 19 degrees. So you can kind of see the heat still radiating through. The inside of the house is about 45 degrees, the inside of this addition. So it's not super warm, but I'm still losing heat because I'm not fully insulated. And the window's about 9 degrees, so that tells me that I'm losing more heat through the wall than the window, which is kind of surprising actually. And the wall's like 19, 20 degrees, and then you go down to this ICF foundation, which is really well insulated, and it's only a couple degrees, so that means it's more efficient because it's about the same temperature as it is outside. The wall sheathing's more, it's warmer, it's 20 degrees, so that tells me some heat's radiating through from the inside to the outside, which should get a lot better once I insulate in between my wall cavities. You can see even my screws. That's an example of thermal bridging. So that screw, all of my screws or nails, are going through the sheathing into the inside of the house to fasten them, and heat's being transferred through that nail out to the outside here. But if I didn't have the 1/2-inch layer of insulation, you would see every stud. I mean, kind of where you see the nail holes, that tape line right there. I'm losing some heat out of that. So like if you go to my barn here, I'm insulated in between every one of my 2x4, my horizontal studs. So it's like a traditional barn. You have horizontal studs every 3 foot or so. And you can see where all those studs are. So now I'm inside of my barn on that same wall I just showed from the outside. And you can see the opposite now. So you can see the darker blue is colder. My horizontal studs, my 2x4s. Kind of a cool example of thermal bridging. And this old house isn't insulated very well in relation to the new one. Seems to me like I'm losing more heat from the old house than the new house, which makes sense. This house isn't insulated well. And you can see the nails coming through. Same thing with the thermal bridging. Those nails are a little bit hotter because it's bringing heat from the inside to the outside. So I always get comments about my outdoor wood boiler about how I'm wasting the heat because it's outside. I don't think those people realize that these are meant to be outside and they're fairly well insulated. The whole water jacket is got, I think, a couple inches of spray foam all the way around it. So it's below zero outside. This is showing around 1 degrees, -3, -4 degrees. And if I hold this at the top of the boiler, at the top of the water tank, it's showing around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And the water temperature inside is 178 degrees. So that's really good in my opinion. The door looks like it's losing a lot of heat, but can't have it all.